Okay, so here's my base ready to go. As you can see, I have cut out my foam core walls to the bunker that's going to go inside this. And just to give you an idea of that whole pre-cutting business, you can see that they fit very nicely in those areas where they're going to go inside the bunker, right, inside the base that we cut for this. Right, so that's kind of the concept. Is they fit in there rather nicely. Okay, so it's a little snug. We can go in there and work on that. So what we're going to do is we need to go about building this bunker in there with the foam core walls. But one step I want to point out is I've cut out firing ports on the side of these before I start building it. A great way to make sure you've got, anytime you've got like a trench side or something that soldiers you want to level their guns over, is to when you plan the cutting, put an actual figure like this long gunner here. You put an actual figure next to that, and then make sure that when you cut that, you're going to get a very logical kind of position for the soldier. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is, before I start to build this, I want to make some metal reinforcements to go around these firing ports. So some like metal plates. So I'm going to use some plastic. In this case, if you've seen my videos before, I always like for sale signs as a 97-cent source of plastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the pieces I cut out of the firing ports, okay, on the walls of the bunker, and I'm going to reposition my camera a little bit. I am going to go ahead and put that on my plastic for sale sign, and again, now we're white on white again, so that doesn't make it easy. Just to give you an idea of what I'm doing if I were to use the other side. Okay, I'm putting it on top of the for sale sign, and I'm going to just kind of arbitrarily, let me get this more on the camera, I'm going to arbitrarily kind of mark around that and make just kind of, I'm going to eye it, I'm going to mark kind of a reinforcing plate to go around that. Okay, so what's going to happen is I'm going to cut this section out, okay, that we've marked, and I'm also going to cut that hole in there again where the firing port goes. Okay, so I'm going to trace it around that firing port. It's not exact, but alright, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this shape out, and I'm going to put it around the firing port, and I'm going to be a little more even when I cut than my rough tracing. But when tracing around a jagged foam core edge, that's going to happen. But I'll show you what that looks like in just a second before we go into building the bunker. Okay, so now we're ready to begin actually putting this bunker together. And I want to show you that, first of all, whenever you put foam core pieces together to get a nice flush edge, there's a little trick. And so what I want to make sure I do so this all fits in this area on the base when we're done is make sure these fit together very squarely when the corners come together. So a great way to do that is to take two of your pieces, figure out where they're going to adjoin. Okay, so in this case, I know these two pieces come together like this. And then what you do is you put one of the pieces up against the next one where they're going to join. You put the width of the foam core piece up against the other width of the foam core piece like that. And then what you do, making sure you've got a flush edge, is, sorry if my hand's in the way a little bit, you draw a line like that. Okay, so now I've got a line drawn there. I'm going to kind of cut out this piece. I'm going to show you how that works. So I'm going to get in there with my X-Acto knife, and I'm going to go about cutting that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut across that line we just made, okay, on the edge of this piece. So I'm basically going to cut there. I'm not going to cut all the way through. That's very important. I want to cut down to the other side, to the paper on the other side, but I don't want to cut through. Okay, so I'm being careful not to cut all the way through to the other side. So as you can see, I did not cut through to the other side. So what I do at this point is, using my knife, separate this paper and this foam from that section that I just cut out as such. Okay, and I want to get all this junk out of here. But what I'm being very careful to do is to still leave that paper on the other side. What we're doing is we're making a joint where these two pieces of the bunker come together. So now, when I create the bunker, they will fit very squarely together. Okay, and so I've got a very nice joint. Okay, like that. It's not only going to lend this more natural support to stay together, it's going to just make for a better fit in here in the end. So what I'm going to do to hold these together is I'm going to actually put my glue, my white glue, my weld bond glue in this joint, okay, on that piece of paper that we left hanging over the edge. And this is where I'm going to glue those together. Now I will be pinning these with just like dress pins, okay, that I'll put in here to hold that joint together while it dries. But basically by doing this, and by cutting a similar joint on every side of the this bunker, what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially pre-cut this, pre-build it, and then simply, I should have a nice fit, insert the whole thing into my bunker. Okay, so that's how I'm going to go about it. So again, you want to pre-cut your joints in the way I showed with the foam core, and build the structure and put it in. So the whole thing can kind of go in at once. And if you find you've got too snug of a fit, you just go in there with a knife, like an X-Acto knife or a steak knife or whatever, and you just dig out a space. In the end, if you've got space out between your walls and this foam core, the styrofoam base, and there's some empty space here around the walls, we can fill that in later, and I'll show you how that's done. But for now, I'm going to continue making these joints so that this fits together and build this, and then we'll talk about inserting it in just a second. Okay, alright, just kind of an update on what this looks like once we've built the bunker. Now, there's two ways to go about it. We build the whole thing, we pop it in, or we can lay these pieces in one by side and kind of rabbit ear together, you know, where we created those joints in the foam core. Right, so basically the structure is beginning to take form. You know, a couple things I want to point out. I always like to point out imperfections along the way when I'm building something to show that later on there's ways around and there's fix-its. First of all, you know, I've got kind of a gap here. I want this ground to be flush up to this, so we're going to fill that in later, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. And some slight gaps, which I really don't want, where this popped in. Alright, here we've got a nice snug fit, and here's a pretty good fit. But we've got some gaps here that we'll fill in. This is really easily done, and we'll get to that step later on near the end. But I wanted to show you this is taking form. We're going to have to build a door in here, but you can see this kind of trench entryway into this structure, and it's beginning to take form. So I'm excited to go on to the next stage. And the next stage is really going to be all about building a roof to this structure as this continues to dry. I've still got my pens in. Alright, so I'm going to give this at least a couple hours to have that weld bond, that white glue take hold. Then we're going to talk about the next stage, building a roof, in just a second.